Hi guys, Dan Bradbury here. In this week's episode of the podcast, I've got something scary for you. Sometimes we have feedback when we have guest speakers on the podcast. They're not relatable. We've had billionaires on. We've had people that have raised over 100 million in venture capital. And while there's some great stuff in there, people go, how does this apply to my business? Well, the guest speaker on this week's episode recently spoke at my CEO Mastermind event. And she scared the crap out of us all because she is a cyber security expert. She's worked for some of the biggest companies in the world, and she knows how small businesses are getting hacked, how they're getting exploited. And she gave so many examples of how it happens and how to protect yourself against it. And in today's society, we're more and more embedded online, we're more dependent on these resources, these platforms, and if you get hacked, it very well could be game over. So with that said, let's get to this week's interview with cyber security expert Jenny Basheva. So Jenny, to start us off, I think a lot of business owners, Topher alluded to it, we kind of, especially entrepreneurs, kind of dismissive of the real threats from security, and yet at the same time, we are increasingly online. More and more, all of our businesses are increasingly dependent upon it. So I actually thought it'd be great to start with a story that you told Topher and I before. And the story I want to begin with is about Salesforce. And obviously Salesforce, an absolute market leader, CRM, cloud computing, and yet early, I think it was, in your time there was a significant problem which significantly undermined trust in the marketplace. And really, that's one way, Barry, that you can think about this. This is about, Jacqueline, how do you maintain trust? Not just the financial cost and the legal ramifications of data breaches and things like that, but actually, how do you make sure that your customers trust you? Because I don't know about you, but society is becoming, do you think it's becoming more trusting or less trusting? Less. And so if your customers, your database loses trust in you, it's over. So could you tell us that story about what happened at Salesforce that caused such a big uproar and, well, ultimately cost them many millions of dollars?
It did indeed. That happened about 2 years ago when I was in Salesforce. One day, everything collapsed in the systems. Nothing was working. And there was no indication what was the real cause of the issue. When you think about a company like Salesforce that has hundreds of thousands of customers and millions of end users, from healthcare to governments to retail especially, and this is not functioning at all, that means we are in serious trouble. And the longer this outage lasts, that means that more money we lose because SLA credits start to kick in. So what happened is...
What's the SLA credit?
SLA credit is basically when you sign an agreement with a service provider, they commit to a certain time of uptime. Usually it's around 98-99%, where 1 or 2% is outage, where it's just normal because they do upgrade to the system, and usually it's timed based on geography with nighttime, so that if there is something as a downtime, it doesn't impact the services. But if that happens as a prime time around 3-4 p.m., then it overlaps a lot of geographical zones from Middle Asia to US. That means a lot of the customers were impacted when this happened. And so we had like hundreds of employees that they began to investigate every single deployment, every single patch, every single, even minor change. What could be the reason that nothing is working? And no one had idea what it was. So we were on the 4th hour, which is usually when the SLA start to kick in. Usually the acceptable SLAs up to 4 hours, you can have an outage. It can be very expensive for certain companies that we have to pay back, but for a lot of companies, this could be still acceptable. But after that, this becomes critical. And we still had no idea at the 4th hour. So you
imagine the stress must have been immense. I mean, imagine being in the company where your whole business is software, online, and in prime time, everything's down. I mean, people are running, in my head at least, people are running around screaming.
Bitching on Twitter, bitching on Facebook, bitching on LinkedIn, calling the company, emailing the company, texting everyone, It was.
That was just you.
Yeah.
That was literally the case.
Yeah.
We were all over the news. You can imagine all the comms, PR teams, everyone is on deck and trying to communicate with customers. All the newspapers and especially news agencies like TechRadar and Wired, everyone is talking about the big outage. At this point, the CEO chips in, starts to apologize. The problem was we still didn't know what's happening. And I think it was slightly after the 5th hour, we discovered that during the transition to the new infrastructure, there were some fields where the character limit was very small, but we were moving legacy systems, so it was old code, long names, and they just couldn't fit in the new fields, and we had the buffer overflow, something super simple. Human error, no one thought about checking that, but that caused massive customer trust shaken and millions of lost, and there was nothing we can do about it. So the lessons learned was to do a lot of testing before you move to a new system, but that was one of the biggest nightmares that a global company can experience, and I witnessed.
I don't know if it's reassuring that it still happens to the big corporates or not, in that a limit in the number of characters that you can put into a field caused outage of a dominant software company in the world, took them down for 5 hours. That's scary. So what as business owners, as the small business owners in this room, what are some of the kind of key things that we do or that we don't do that drive you crazy as a security expert?
Well, there could be a lot of things, but let's think about some simple things. In small businesses, a lot of the businesses don't invest in password management tool. And employees use weak passwords, often repeat the passwords in multiple accounts, and that is an easy entry to your environments.
Just out of curiosity, without saying what the password is, how many here are using the same password for at least 5 specific different things? Yeah.
I was surprised by the honesty. I was going to say, they're not going to put their hands down. Yep, I'm vulnerable. Come on over.
What's your birthday?
By the way, Dan should have raised his hand if he didn't. Yeah. Yeah. And how many is your birthday? Yeah. Yeah.
The second is quite close to password management tool. In small businesses, employees are free often to do whatever they want, and because there isn't a central IT team or security team, people are free to enable or disable MFA accounts, multi-factor authentication features. That means that a lot of employees don't have any additional authentication factors, and that makes it very easier to penetrate those accounts, because password cracking takes seconds. Often people use very weak passwords, repeat them, and they're already available on the darknet. And if you don't have MFA, that means there is nothing stopping.
And I'm sure that most people in the room know what multi-factor authentication is, but just in case they don't, could you give us a brief, what is MFA?
Multi-factor authentication is basically something you know, something you have, and something you own. So the password is something you know, something you have, and then as a factor, it could be something like OTP app. I don't know, maybe potentially all of you or most of you have Google Auth or Microsoft Auth or Twilio Auth. Some of those where you can get the code and you enter it. And then something you have could be a biometric fingerprint, iris scan, voice or visual authentication.
And the whole point is presumably just to stop somebody who intercepts or gets access to the password just being able to access your account, because they don't simultaneously have the phone where they can get the text message or use the code generator.
Well, text messages actually are easily crackable, so if you want to enable MFA, you make sure to use authentication apps, because nowadays it's very easy to intercept the text messages, hijack your phone number, and then get the code. So don't use that. Even at the moment, the authentication apps are quite easy to get the codes, but still much more secure than text messages. Don't use emails for authentication factor. Don't use text messages. Use OTP, or if you have like YubiKeys, separate keys, encrypted keys that you plug in into your laptop with a fingerprint, that's the most secure.
Just to warn you,
OTP.
just to warn you, Topher is deeply insecure and paranoid at the best of times. So this talk is probably going to tip him over the edge into living in a cave. And you laugh, but that laugh is a laugh of recognition, because that is absolutely spot on.
Yes, it is. I have issues. What? Oh, you said OTP. OTP?
It's one-time password.
Oh,
It's the Google Auth, Microsoft Auth, those applications. Yeah.
So actually, let's tee this up of how, again, it relates to business. Could you tell us the story about Cisco? So again, another, the data breach. I thought.
No.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't disclose the name of the company.
Okay, then tell me about data breach at any random massive company.
I'm not allowed to disclose the company name, but I'll share a story about data breach that I was part of to investigate. So one of the biggest nightmares, a CISO, which is Chief Information Security Officer, the highest strategic person that leads the security of a company, is to wake up to a news for data breach in the company without knowing that that happened. Like, no one in your company knows that data breach happened, and you're finding it out from BBC News in the morning, for instance, or Guardian or Financial Times. That's the biggest nightmare. Oh. One day, that's what happened in one of my ex employers. So the entire team was woken up to the news, and we had no idea about it. But the news had a snippet of our customers' names, and also some other data that we will collect, which was very sensitive data. Clearly it was from our systems, but we still needed to validate if this is correct or someone is playing a guessing game. So the entire security team, we started to do investigation on one end, and then there was another separate team of senior security experts, government agencies, because this was a big company, along with some specialists, and they were investigating the source of this information. So they got in touch with the news, from where they got the information and so on. And it was an interesting situation. We were deep diving systems, looking access, looking data extracts for first month, second month, and we were going back in time, and we couldn't find anything suspicious. After a day, the second team managed to confirm that whoever was the malicious actor was local to the company, was someone known to the company. This enabled us to change our strategy for investigation, and we start to look for people that have left the company, either by their own initiative or through disciplinary proceedings. And within hours, we detected a name that was let go a year ago before malperformance. And this person decided to be crafty, took a huge extract of data that he had access as part of his day-to-day role. It was just very normal to access that data. So that did not trigger red flag on our end, because it was part of his job. And further investigation showed that this employee obviously wasn't happy that was let go. He tried to sell the data to our competitors, but no competitor will take that data, because it's a small industry in a way, especially with the type of data that was taken away. So this person didn't end up making any money, and decided just to shame the company by going public and trying to stay hidden. After discovering who this was, this person was sued and convicted, prison time. And it was a huge lesson learned for the company where I worked, because we ended up implementing multiple processes and also tools to start monitoring all the levers and all the people that undergo performance reviews, to make sure that anything they do is recorded and reviewed by a dedicated team, so that even something looks just quite normal, you want to make sure that whenever they are completing it is at the appropriate time. They don't log in at 2 a.m. and take that data, or they don't log into the account from an IP address which is different to their usual address, or they're using different tactics. Anything that could trigger suspicion is being recorded, so that that is investigated and we can prevent insider threat.
Was this person fired, or did they resign?
He was fired for malperformance a year before. Before that,
year.
he spent a year trying to sell it. He thought he's going to make a lot of money from it.
Oh, so let me have a guess. This might just be me, but who here in this room has had an ex-employee take data from your company? Who's had that experience? Show of hands.
Dan, I can tell you a personal story.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so I don't know. It's not an insignificant proportion of the room. No. And Topher jokes about this before, but it's also true. There, the hands are raised that people are comfortable raising their hands. And secondly, so there's some might not been comfortable raising their hand, and some of you, it's been taken. You just don't know it was taken.
Yeah.
Right. So they took the sales data to start up their own business, to give them salespeople the most common in my experience for it, of taking the data so they can go and work for a competitor and they can still work the same leads that you paid for.
I can share with you guys a personal nightmare story. I had an employee who was not fired, but they were laid off, and they were, by all estimates, a good employee the entire time. It's just that they weren't producing the results. I had to make a tough decision, and I had to let him go. And I did so what I considered to be in a very loving way, but the guy was just really having a hard time with it. I go to his house to pick up the computer. He's got his phone out. He's recording me, which I thought was a little bit weird. He was my IT guy, by the way. And I took the computer. That was it. Never heard from the guy ever again. This was a decade goes by. I decided to run for mayor of my city. 10 years this guy held this grudge against me because I laid him off. I didn't even fire him, and I gave him a great letter of recommendation. Over a decade later, I go to run for mayor. He goes through and he takes all of my content and selectively edits everything from text messages to training materials. And I mean, if you've ever seen how people can edit stuff, you can change any message in any narrative you want. And this guy completely redefined me by manipulating text messages in order and out of order and deleting context, took training materials and took jokes and put them out of context, and then went to the public and told anybody and everybody if they wanted to see what kind of an asshole I was, they could download all this free material. Over a decade. Nothing to do with it.
Well, I'm sorry, but you shouldn't have fired me. I'm just quite...
Yeah, so it happens. It absolutely happens.
It's quite common.
Yeah. And I had no way of knowing that he copied anything, but how do you protect against that? Like, is there a way to, as a business owner, make sure that your employees cannot literally, I mean, he copied everything.
Yes, there are many new tools that actually can prevent that. If you have a tick VPN, which is something very, very old school, and you're not cloud-based, then actually you can implement controls that will block any extraction of data or any copying or even taking photo. But this is old school, and I hope that most of the people here are already mostly on the cloud, which is much easier. Of course it's safer, as long as you know how to manage it.
Well, there you go, okay.
So there are several new vendors on the market that provide browsers that actually, when you access your cloud applications, you go through the browser. It could be also just plug into your existing Google Chrome, let's say, or Safari, or whatever you use. And through that, you can disable, just like tick VPN, the taking of pictures. You can select only people that are allowed, for instance, to take a screenshot, because some roles might need that. And you can disable taking photos. If someone tries to take a photo, that will be something blurry, they won't be able to see it. They can't download or extract anything, because if they download, it's going to go on a separated sandbox from where they should operate for their role, but it cannot be extracted anywhere outside that. So there are plenty of tools, and they're getting better and better. The question is how much money you have to afford them.
Well, I suppose that's probably a good question is about money. I mean, you already mentioned kind of using a password management tool, which costs effectively nothing, right? What for the people in this room, so 7-figure business owners, so they're not massive companies, but you know they are trading, and there is a very real risk of financial damage if there's a data breach, or we're going to come on to fraud and things like that in a moment. How should they think about how much money they should spend, right? Because on the one hand, if you could argue if you spend nothing, you might go, well, you're being wasteful and you're leaving yourself exposed. albeit I know there are certain free tools which are useful and good practice, but at the other end, you could go completely overkill and then never make any money. Oh yeah, all your employees, nobody can even log into the internet, and they can't do anything. So how would you suggest they might think about when to spend and how much to spend?
Well, it's about getting the basics right, and for that you don't need to overspend. I was looking at the statistics, and for the past couple of years, small and medium-sized businesses have been spending between 5% and 20%, depending in which sector they are. If you are operating in a more sensitive sector like financial services or healthcare, you likely will spend more around 20-25%. But if you are in, let's say, car dealership, you probably will spend 5% or less than that.
5% of what? Revenue?
Your budget.
Oh, 5% of your overall IT budget?
General budget.
Okay. So I'm guessing all expenses.
Yeah.
Your expenses. Okay, your overhead. Okay, and let's jump into, because I think it kind of might tie the two together, as the real risk of loss. So another story that you shared that I really liked was with the business compromise emails, and how it didn't succeed in this case, but how for a small business, I think it was, one that shall not be named, there was no name on the email, but they were exposed to potentially fraudulent transactions. So I asked just before the break, remind me, who in here has had been a victim of fraud, whether business or personal, where you've sent money somewhere and it's been sent to the wrong account details, or you've somehow been defrauded? Show of hands? Yeah, okay, good. So could you tell us a little bit about that story? Because I think if this has not happened to you, it's rife, and it seems to be becoming even more of an epidemic.
It is indeed. So small and medium-sized companies are more likely to receive a business compromise email, and usually directed to their CEO, CFO, or executive accountant assistants. And the likelihood is 350%. So one of the 300 emails coming into your company is more likely malicious and has fake details looking for some type of fake financial transfers. I think
you were about to give the example, so please go on.
I'll give an example. I mean, I can name the company because it's my current company where I work today. I joined them a bit over a year ago. It was my day 3. It was Friday, 5 p.m. I had hardly met people, like maybe, 5, 7, 8 people. On the first week you do mostly training when you're on board, so you don't meet that many people. And I get this notification from the marketing team saying that they just received this email from a partner company which had data breach, and all their customer details were exposed. And we should be watching out for emails coming from the partner company that have invoices in the past 3 months. We have to double check if these invoices have the correct banking details, because they might be unreal. And they also talked about several of their customers that already fallen victim for these fake invoices.
So just to be clear, so your company got notified by a partner company. So let's say I've got utilize Topher's company. Topher emails says, listen, I've got a data breach. You need to go back and check any invoices you've had from my company.
Absolutely.
Because they might have been intercepted and the bank account details changed. So I think that I'm paying Topher, but I'm actually
paying to Topher. Absolutely. So it was my day 3, as I said. I was new. I didn't know anyone. And it was 5 p.m. Friday. Everyone had already switched off. Like, there were only a few people online that I have never met before, and probably they were not the right people that can help so that I can do something about it. So I started to Slack and call and try to find anyone that can help, because I had no idea if any emails were received, and actually we have had paid anything or what's going on. No background. Eventually I managed to get a hold of one of the senior VPs in finance, and we find out that we had received 4 emails in the past 3 months, and they all had invoices. All invoices were slightly tweaked, and the account details, they all had different account details as well. And so we didn't know which ones are correct and which ones are not, but clearly some of the emails were wrong. The amounts varied. Some of them had 2,000 euros and others up to 15,000 asking. So it was about 30,000 euros in total that will have been the damage if payments were made. But it was Friday, so we couldn't do anything else except knowing which emails, knowing which invoices, which were tracked on a spreadsheet at the time as well, and no other news. So on Monday, first thing when everyone was back, we reached out to the account payable team and went through what they have paid in the past 3 months, and it turned out those were due to be paid just at the end of the month, of the quarter. So luckily for us, we hadn't processed any payments.
Wow.
But 30,000 for a small company is quite a lot. This will have been annual salary for one of the employees in Spain. So it was good. We saved it, but they were all fake invoices. Every single one was amended. It had a wrong account. So what we did as a lessons learned was first making sure that the entire finance team are trained. They can identify fake emails or business compromise email, as they're called. And the bank providers that we use for payments, we implemented additional control where if we change the account details of our partners and providers, it will trigger notification for second verification. And we also moved away from spreadsheets and finally made them use an actual accounting software and spend money on it.
Very good. It's frightening how fast this stuff is learning, right? So here's one for me, literally in the last couple of weeks. You think apps are secure, or like banks. So I was making a reasonably large payment. I think it was 30,000 or 50,000 pounds, somewhere in that region, so tens of thousands, and between two of my companies. And I made the payment, and it left my account, right? And it did not arrive at the other end. So and I think this was again Friday, right? And I'm like, just a bit twitchy because it should be relatively instant or within a couple of hours. Not arrived. And then when I look into it, I kind of check, and I'm mortified when I look at the app. In the app, the bank details seem to be different than the bank details in the app from the sending bank. And now, fortunately, I'm like, oh my God, what's gone on? Fortunately, I only got the solution when the sending bank, which was NatWest, rang me up and said, hey, we've held this money. We've not sent it because we need to confirm the account details. And I'm like, so I've given away the punchline, because at this point I'm like, yeah, I've done this payment loads of times. I've moved money between these companies. How many fucking times? And I got really arsey with them, which I know that's hard to imagine. I mean, but I was like, oh my God, you are wasting my time. I do this monthly. So this movement of cash is not important. Like, can you just check the details? And I go into the app and I see that the account details are different. And they're like, right, so we've held the money, so you haven't made the payment. And so I still don't know like where this happened and where it went wrong. All I know is that I was saved by this system, which normally pisses you off, but I would have been 50 grand lighter. So could you speak to, I think we've got an assumption that, because by the way, the bank wouldn't even accept me saying, oh, well, this is the account details. And I don't know, we don't even believe, is the one that you were trying to send to wrong, or the one that's now in there wrong? Like, can you call up the receiving bank and check the account details? I'm like, you want me to call up a bank and sit on hold for 3 hours just to say, please can I confirm my account details? And they were like, yeah. But they hadn't given me my money back. So I did it, and then so all this unpacked, and the point is, I was assuming that the apps are secure. So, you're the definitive authority in this room, Jenny. Are apps secure? Can we trust apps being secure? Where are the vulnerabilities? Surely a financial institute's app that's on all our phones must be secure and inhackable.
Wow. That's a tricky question. So most of the apps that are being released through Apple Store and Android stores, Google stores, have to go through certain security tests before they are being made available on the store. However, the requirement to retest the security is annual for most of the cases. That means that during this period, the app security can be compromised. So they are definitely secure when they land there because they have to prove to Apple or Google. But after that, you will do multiple releases to the app during the year as a provider. You will improve features or security patches, and even if you haven't tested enough, something can go wrong. Updates,
code for they figured us out. We've got a big whole flaw in our system.
And it could be a small backdoor, but there are a lot of people scanning, especially Android phones are really, really good at hacking actual apps that are within Android. So there are hackers looking for opportunity and waiting and checking and scanning what's getting vulnerable out there. And naturally, their focus will be on apps that process financial data, gaming apps, banking apps, anything related with money will be their target where there will be 4 eyes. So likely the encryption for transmission wasn't properly implemented, and that enabled them to spoof the connection and change the data.
You just said Android there. So as a self-professed, self-righteous Apple devotee, are you saying then that iPhones are better? Please say yes.
I personally prefer iPhone, but I think well, we couldn't say that really because let's not forget.
No, we can say it. Sorry.
Only this year, Apple released and patched 44 0 days. 44 0 days means that they're not very secure.
Oh.
I mean, Android usually is worse, but
Wow.
even 44 in we are quarter almost 3 ending, so it's a lot for a year.
So I take from this that when you get notified of updates to apps or actually to your operating system,
please do that.
Get that done straight away, right? Because even if the company issues the patch, and says it's critical, if you are anything like me, it's like I've got 76 things open. It's like, oh yeah, put it off. But they're issuing the patch for a reason, right? If you think about it, especially when it's a security patch, the company don't actually want to do the patch. That costs them money to issue a patch. They're doing it because there's a vulnerability, right?
Is that generally the reason why they have those security updates? It's not because it's a performance enhancement, it's because they identified a breach in the system and they have to patch a hole?
Well, if it's a performance issue, then actually won't say security patch.
Oh, okay, so it'll be different. Okay, well, they're almost all security updates. So yes, that means that they found a hack.
So what? Let's talk about the future, or now in the future. So what are either some trends that are going on now, actually, that we need to watch out for, or what are where is this going? I mean, I think anecdotally, Toph and I were talking with the room earlier about a particular book that says if technology is getting more addictive, right? It's got radically more addictive in the last 20, 30 years. It's going to be increasingly so in the future, so we become even more enslaved to it. Does that have a knock-on effect with security? Is it going to become more secure or less secure? Are there more threats or less threats?
I have to be honest that the threat landscape is increasing. It's becoming vaster and vaster, and fighting the threats becomes more difficult, especially with generative AI. It's smarter than people and knows much better how to handle a lot of things. So some of the biggest trends at the moment are the perfect phishing and social engineering emails that will land into your inbox. They will look so authentic that you wouldn't think it's fake.
What you just said, the term, you said social engineering. Mm-hmm. Unpack that.
Social engineering is when you are a targeted victim, when a malicious actor will select you as a CEO of company X because they think that you are an easy target to gain your financial accounts and make you wire money to a fake account or whatever their objective is. Maybe you are a healthcare company with high-profile customers and actually your data is more valuable than your bank accounts. So they will target you with the perfect business compromise email that will look so good coming from your account executive or your CFO or your wife or who knows, and gain access to your account details, and from there the actual attack will proceed.
Is this like the attacks where you've seen which it's a little bit old now, but it still does the rounds. You get a text message from, "Hi, Mum, I've had to change my phone number. My phone's been stolen. You know, blah 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 blah. Or I've changed my phone number and I urgently need £100, and therefore, if it goes to mothers, you know, even if it's any mother of child of any age, some will dismiss it. But those that have got a child at that age where they use phones and might need a little bit of money urgently are likely to is that well, not very sophisticated, but is that an example of that?
It is called smishing because it's through a text message, SMS. And actually, yes, it's getting worse. Nowadays, you can have video phishing. You will see on a video someone that you actually know that is calling and asking you for money, but actually it's not the real person, and you will get smishing. The text messages, for instance, on WhatsApp with actual profile picture of your WhatsApp account and asking you for money. And yeah, you will look at it and you will say, oh, that's my son. It's just coming through a different, not usual text message, maybe different number, and which is very plausible because he lost his previous one. Right. Well, you can keep your number, but you don't think that fast when you receive the message, and you will proceed with the payment.
I immediately think my dad will fall for every one of these. I'm thinking, you talk about that, like, what's the AI that generates pictures from text? I forget what that was called, Midjourney. Will there be a time then when AI will be able to, based upon the data, be able to replicate my ocular footprint, if you will, to where Midjourney could replicate my eye, and then that hacker could use that for my access? Is that stuff that could come down the road?
That's a quite imaginative scenario.
I'm paranoid.
More likely, if you are using your iris for a multi-factor authentication and the service provider for the authentications get breached, then it will be on internet and then AI can access it. But I don't think AI will generate specifically your iris. I don't think, not yet. Yeah, at least not yet.
Just imagine it, all of Topher's social media posts with the eyes blacked out.
I'm doing that from now on. It'll just be black eyes. I'll look like a soulless creature.
So if we're hacked with ransomware, right? So again, becoming increasingly popular, and if you think about it, it will gradually go down. This might start with bigger companies, but the bigger companies have the most in security spend. Okay, but therefore they come a tier down where they're not spending quite as much money and they can be exposed. It'll gradually, and things like AI will, I would imagine, further propagate it. Right? What should we do? I've never personally been subject to a ransomware attack, but what is the protocol? So in some of the companies that you've worked for, that shall remain nameless, what's the protocol if there's a ransomware attack?
So firstly, actually cyber criminals today see small and medium-sized businesses more lucrative for ransomware attacks than large enterprises, because small companies like yours more likely don't have sufficient security protection. And it's so much easier to access you guys. I mean, hopefully not, but in general, it will be so much easier to access you. And as a cyber criminal group that specializes in ransomware, it will be better for them to launch many attacks against small and medium-sized companies than big ones, gain much more financial profit, and have less media and law enforcement attention than going to a big company, because anything like Salesforce or Microsoft or AWS, if it gets ransomware, then it will be all over the news. Just think about MGM hotels and casinos in Las Vegas. Everyone knows about it. But if it was a small hotel chain in UK, I mean, except maybe the local newspapers, no one else will have known them, and they will have just gone and paid for it. So small companies actually are a bigger target, and 43% of the ransomware actually is targeted to small companies nowadays rather than the big companies.
Pay or no pay?
So that entirely depends from what you have locked in, and we have a backup of it. The protocol nowadays is ideally you will have a cyber insurance that covers ransomware. However, a lot of the cyber insurance policies have begun to decline payments for ransomware. So if you have...
So they're just like any other insurance company.
Yeah, exactly. If it's a policy that is long-term and had that already included, lucky you. If you have to renew it annually or more frequently, then likely you no longer have it. But if you do have some type of cyber insurance, then first protocol is to reach out to your cyber insurance provider, because they will have the right resources to help you to investigate the ransomware. If, let's say, you don't have any backups, you really need the data, because otherwise you won't function as a business. But you can't afford really the payment because they're asking you to pay, let's say, you said 7-figure average revenue. Let's say they're asking you to pay 1 million, and all you have is 1.5 million, right? So what cyber insurance firms often do nowadays is have back at the time, we had ransom negotiators for people. Now we have ransomware negotiators in insurance companies. So all ransomwares usually will tell which gang is infecting you. So these investigators, negotiators will reach out to the gangs and negotiate the fee down to something they can accept to pay, or then see how you can agree with the customer, like yourselves, how much you can pay and how much the insurance, so that this goes ahead and you pay for it. But ideally, you shouldn't get that far, because if you have backups, the insurance company can help you with other professionals to access your backups to a latest version that is not locked, and recover your services and completely ignore the ransom.
Oh, this is terrifying.
So I'm looking at Topher's face. He's getting increasingly ashen as the session's going on.
Here's why. I'll tell you why. Because I think I'm probably obviously more paranoid than some. Like, we have a policy at our company. And one of the things, by the way, that in fact, I'll give a big plug for Alexis and Air Manual here. We have a policy that says you are not allowed to click on a link. In text or in email, you cannot click it. If you have a link that somebody asks you to click, you're to respond with, and we have a pre-written email that basically says, our company policy is we don't click on links unless two things are secure. Number one, it's addressed to us personally. Number two, there's a description of what's on the other side of that link. Could you please tell me what's on the other side of the link and how do you know me? And that seems to do a good job. Like, and that policy expires every 2 weeks in my company. So every 2 weeks, my employees are given an email that says they have to go in, open up the policy again, click they acknowledge it, because I know that's something that they'll just forget unless it's just hammered into their head. And now I'm starting to realize that with social engineering, those two things could easily be constructed to where they would literally be thinking they're speaking to the people that they know. Like, that's no longer going to be a sufficient policy, and that's even more extreme than most small business owners do. That's why I'm getting paranoid.
And this is great. I'm now thinking I'm going to come up with a company policy that I only pay people if I send you a link via text message that you have to click on to confirm the bank payment. It's scary. So I'm curious, Jenny, to translate this into what software or services you recommend, because it seems to me there's so often human error. So here's a fun story. Several years ago, I bought a high-end sports car from Grey Paul Ferrari in Birmingham, and several months later, so they did all the checks, and they
let me just pick up that name that you dropped there for Ferrari. There you go. Okay, sorry.
The point being, this is a national chain, right? Like, and high-end wealthy customers. And several months later, I got a letter saying, "Oh, we're sorry. It appears that all your information related to this purchase, including my driving license, including my bank account details, were all put in a Google Drive folder that was left with open access. Anybody could access. And the way it was discovered is somebody found it on Google, like a Google search."
Jesus.
Right, and this is it's not a large company, but it's only a medium-sized company. Like hundreds of millions in annual sales, must be, right? And yet it was just in an open Google Drive folder. So it might be about software, it might be about service, it might be about protocol. What do you recommend we should be looking at or thinking about to kind of keep us safe? Are there certain software where you go, no, don't use that? use this one, this is better. Don't use that password management tool. Use this password management tool. Or is it particular protocol? Could you give us any kind of top tips? Because at the moment, Topher's mortified. I'm mildly concerned. But it's where should we look? How might we start hacking away at this and making ourselves a bit more secure beyond getting cyber insurance?
Yeah, cyber insurance nowadays you won't be able to get if you don't prove that you are already secure somehow. So there's that too.
Oh, just for fun, who's got cyber security in this room?
You have to complete a long questionnaire before you are able to get the insurance.
All right, so the minority, 6 people, of which one had half a hand. No, I don't.
Yeah.
No. So, okay, good. What else?
Well, for your specific story, that means that someone shared the link in order to be accessible online. And something is missing in the story because it won't be so easily accessible. So this link was quite popularized, like in a forum or something.
Yes.
So I will be really terrified if that really happened. So a lot of companies that use Google or Outlook, when we talk about Outlook, like OneDrive, allow external sharing. But the question is, you have to have policies to make sure that certain people can only share externally, or these drives are separate from internal drives. And you have regular access reviews and make sure that the permissions are correct with the same with the authorized users. But if you let everything available for public sharing just with a link, anyone on the internet can access it because there is also a security feature for that, then this is the scenario with your example. So usually it's good to get at least once a year someone, even if you don't have like a security professional in your company, just get someone for a day or two just to check your tools and review what's the configuration, do like security health check if you like, and tell you like, maybe you need to improve your Google security, enterprise security. And it's quite easy because funny enough, Google nowadays with generative AI has already enabled you a automatic security health check. For companies specifically, you just press a button and it tells you what you need to fix, and then you press another button and it fixes everything. But if you have developed processes that are dependent on the links accessible on internet, then causing those links means that your business can collapse, depending what process you have enabled. So while it is very easy to secure things, at the same time could be very dangerous if it impacts your business. So you have to be aware of that as well.
Come back next time for more uplifting motivational stories.
So I would recommend another thing to do, especially around emails, because we are all email heavy, or Slack or Salesforce heavy, is to use the security health checks. Most of them have it, as I said, and it's just press of a button for the discovery and the actual fix. And also for emails, to use something like Proofpoint. I'm not saying go specifically to Proofpoint, but it's one of the best tools on the market.
What's it called?
Proofpoint.
Proofpoint.
Yeah, and there are similar providers. Proofpoint is very expensive nowadays, but there are alternatives that you can use that actually are really good at blocking ransomware and telling you if you have open doors to close them, and scanning any attachments or links and telling you if they are suspicious, and putting them in quarantine before enabling access to those. So having that type of solution, it could enable you to be a bit more secure. I wouldn't say 100%, but be a bit more secure and more relaxed when you receive emails with links from people you know.
Yeah.
I want to talk about AI, but I'm aware that we'll do our usual thing. Well, Topher and I will just ask you 7,000 questions and ignore the audience.
And then we get negative feedback from the audience. Rude, by the way, that we didn't give them the ability to ask any questions. So should we turn to the questions for the group?
That was my subtle cue for that.
Yeah. All right. Catchbox. All right. Oh, so we're here. All right, cool. So Lisa, I think I saw her hand go up first. So we're going to go over there. Lisa, here we go. Ready? I'm trying to, what's the least threat? The laptop or the drink? Here we go. There you go.
Cheers. Hi. Terrifying and enlightening all at the same time. So my primary question is that there's different incoming threat possibilities. So you've spoken a lot about being hacked. and how you can protect yourself from that, encrypting your software, encrypting your hard drives, having your email security set up, DKIM, DMARC, that kind of thing, proof point, encrypted drives. And I get all of that. So that's protecting from an external threat coming in and being able to access the data, putting Trojans on your computers. That I get. But you spoke at the beginning of the talk, you spoke about employees taking data. Now, in this world, especially post-COVID, we are ever more remote. Now, back in the day, when I had 40 developers sitting in a room, we had stealth software, we're recording what they're doing on their screen, we're limiting their access to the internet. It's a certain amount of control. But now, I think my business is completely cloud-based, and my team is fully remote. And across, I've got Philippines, I've got India, I've got America, I've got all over the place. So, whilst we ensure that they're secure in the sense of they're working off encrypted hard drives, and we've got two-factor, multi-factor, one-time, whatever, everything sorted, and we use password manager, obviously, how can we protect ourselves from an internal data breach?
Great question. And maintain morale, right?
So I've just spoken directly to Topher's paranoia there.
Yeah.
So yeah, internal data breach. That's people on your team screwing you over, Topher.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, one of the biggest threats at the moment, the insider threats, what you can do in order to make sure that this doesn't happen. So except the dedicated tools that actually continue to scan now being remotely and looking what is happening in every single tool you have, the best approach is to implement zero trust access network, where access to certain tools is actually time scoped. For instance, you have a critical system where with production data, and engineers don't really need to access that data in active environment. They might need to sometimes see and do troubleshooting, but they don't need read access to that environment. So they will go through this zero trust access network solution and get only 1 hour access to see what it looks like in the production environment. But you can use the same approach for any other tool you have, as long as you put them in the network. When you are on the internet, you are no longer having these thick VPNs and internal networks. You can be open and operate globally, but in order to make sure that everything is safe and data doesn't leave your accounts, you just scope the access. And then there will be environments where they will have full-time access because that's part of their job. And that comes back to a factor like what they do, because actually they have full-time access to a critical data, which I'm the most scared that be taken away. So here comes again like zero trust browsers that you can use, something new. As I said, it's a bit expensive nowadays, but it's one of the best approaches. And if it's a Google Drive, for instance, because you store all your unstructured data there, there is a tool called GAT. Just an example for Google, there's equivalent for Microsoft, or depending what you use. GAT will tell you exactly which employees, if they are accessing and exporting or moving too much data, and where they go.
It's called GAT?
Yeah.
G-A-T?
Yeah. It gives you, and it will give you a report as often as you want. Like in my company, nowadays we do like weekly, and we can see exactly how many employees access which folders, and if they move data, how much data they move, and it creates you like a full report. And then if there's something suspicious, you just tap the person's shoulder of a Slack and say like, I'm seeing like a lot of data is moving between folders, or you're actually emailing things to your personal email, what's going on, which I've seen as well. So there are tools that can enable you, depending where is your critical data. You don't want to close everything. Don't put everything in zero trust network, because then it becomes really difficult to operate. Yeah. But anything critical, like in my current company, we have about 15 critical applications, and only 15 are in the zero trust network. And you can make it as easy as possible, just with a Slack command. I want access for 1 hour or 4 hours, and certain employees can have read access, certain employees can have view or write or whatever. You can define the permissions based on user roles and groups. And in this way, the tool that actually manages all this access then logs every action they do when they get access to that environment. it's actually a video, for instance, on some tools, which is really cool because you actually can see on the video what they did there if you have any concerns, and they can send alerts then into your SIEM, which is another tool for logging and monitoring and creating red flag alerts if something suspicious happens, and then we investigate it as an incident if something really happens.
So that zero trust network, then, that's a way of then you having security if they're using their own computers, working remotely, doing work, then you can control that. Because I think, there used to be a time, and certain companies like software development, banking, they almost always issue computers for that person to use out of their home, and they have to give them back. But I would imagine there's a lot of people here that have employees that are remote that are using their own personal PCs or MacBooks. So that system then would be a way to let them use their personal computers, but still have that same level of security. Is that what you're saying?
That is absolutely correct, because then you can set up, depending what kind of network you create, zero trust network. If you integrate it with your identity provider as well, then you can specify what kind of laptops can access your network, the zero trust one. The laptops have to be, for instance, with antivirus, have to be patched, or they can access this network only from a certain location. So you can be as stringent as you want, or you can be as free as you want, depending also from the role, because you don't want certain roles like sales to be blocked of accessing, but maybe you want your customer success team that actually accesses your customer details to be a bit more restricted. I mean, it's up to you, but depending from your business.
And I apologize for my ignorance. When you say zero trust network, is that a brand name, or is that a system that several companies sell zero trust networks?
Oh, it's not a brand name, it's
Okay.
an actual protocol, if you like a security control. There are a lot of companies, vendors that provide the service, from Cloudflare to Zscaler to Akamai, the list goes on.
Okay, so if we searched zero trust network
Access.
for small
Yeah.
businesses or something, we would find a number of different companies that we could use. Gotcha.
Yes, like in my current company, which is a small company where I work, we can't afford Cloudflare or Akamai or Zscaler because they're very expensive. We use something called Strong DM, for instance, which is not as good as the others, but still provides similar services and fits the box. So there are alternatives that you can, find that is within your budget, and tick the box. You just have to make the research.
Yeah, great. That was a great question.
I've
Did you have a
I've
follow-up?
got just a little follow-on from that. We support a lot of businesses in their CRM usage. So we've got a lot of clients in the room. They've got sales agents accessing data tables, Salesforce users essentially, and similar. How can those business owners protect themselves from their staff just literally exporting data sheets and reutilizing them in much the same way as your first story happened? Because I appreciate everything that you're saying around, IP protocols and all the rest of it, but from people actually just going into Salesforce, downloading a CSV and going, thanks very much, I'm now going to go and contact these people directly. How can we protect ourselves and our clients from that?
Which, by the way, is a great question, because that's probably one of the most common things
Oh my
small
God, the
business owners face.
neurosis that
Yeah.
my clients have around their sales teams nicking the data that they've paid fortunes for. I mean, that's one of the main, let alone my staff who are processors of data on behalf of our clients, of having it all on lockdown.
So having worked on Salesforce and from customer side and also in Salesforce, this is one of the controls, one of my favorites, which is less used specifically for Salesforce.
I'm trying to cough inconspicuously straight into the microphone.
Backfired, didn't it? Start over, please.
Most of the sales agents have used a mobile version of the Salesforce. What you can do is completely block download of any sheets except the accounts that they have access to, and you can even block that. They won't be able to download anything if they are on the mobile app logged in. And if it's on desktop, then you can create user groups and allow download only to manager level. And if you use events dashboard, there is events monitoring dashboard, which Einstein at the moment. They are changing the names constantly, but you actually can receive triggers as an IT or security team if even managers are excessively downloading sheets.
And copying and pasting as well. It's not just downloading, right? You can actually put event monitoring onto copying and pasting as well.
Event monitoring is actually, you can configure it in so many ways and then receive various notifications is the best way. But you can also implement transaction security policies, which are customized security policies, and then adjust them based on the sales team, because some sales teams or some locations may have specific needs that are different to others. So through the transaction security policies, you can adjust, add additional controls, and then include them again in the events monitoring dashboards.
Thanks. I'm not going to geek out anymore, guys.
Wonderful. Great questions. Anybody else? All right, Phil. There you go.
Hi. What for a small business of 5 to 10 employees who are working remotely using Google Office, what is there any sense that what is a more likely threat? Actually, should you be more worried about external threats or more worried about internal? Looking to yourself, or is it more you're the greatest risk to yourself by not doing things like passwords and fairly simple things? So where should you be kind of looking, or is it equally all three?
It depends from what kind of company you are, your culture, and if all your employees are happy or not. So I can't comment if you internally have to be quite cautious, but externally certainly, because as I mentioned earlier, more and more companies that have less than 50 employees are being targeted with business compromise emails. Because you are a small team, that means each function, one person is acting as CEO and CFO and so on, and you have a lot going on. So you want to scrutinize every single email that comes through, and you will react quickly, and therefore that's when you actually fall victim to wiring large money transfer requests or opening a link that you shouldn't. So usually small teams are more susceptible to external threats.
It's interesting because I think that I think about a lot. I used to think when I was younger that if I wasn't a business owner, I'd be an excellent criminal mastermind. Is that it's useful, I find, to think about how you'd exploit your own system, right? So I always kind of naturally thought this way. From a financial point of view, it's relatively obvious to me, and for a long period of time, if you've got significant cash reserves and multiple people access the accounts payable team, or you've got an assistant that accesses the main operating account, you keep the lowest possible amount of money you can keep in there and keep the reserves with an account that only you, say, have access to. Still, you've got threats of being defrauded or whatever, but it's kind of like, okay, you're minimizing the risk. And that sounds not dissimilar to what you say with the no trust networks. You put the relevant things in there, the super secure stuff, the equivalent of the big pot of money, but the things that everybody needs to use is there just with it has more access, but then there's lower risk. There's lower risk if it comes about. And I told that story and I had a connecting point and I've completely forgotten it. So I'm just going to move on.
Well, I can add to that, because I think it's a good practice, especially for the business finances, to split them into 2 or 3 accounts and make sure that accounts payable use one account where you wire your expense amount for the month or whatever you're paying for the quarter, and then everything else sits in the other 2 accounts. It's good from resilience perspective, but also from security perspective. Right. And then make sure for any large amounts you have at least 2 people checking before something is being wired.
I thought the connection out, the CRM connection. Think about this. This is definitely true for anybody in the room that uses Infusionsoft. How many Infusionsoft users in the room? Right, okay, good. But it's probably true for most CRM systems. If you were a salesperson, right, so we're talking about the data breach, if you had 10 seconds, a minute, let's say, to go in, assuming you had access, so beyond turning the access off or removing the export, if you had to copy and paste, how could you get access to the best quality leads or customers in your, if you're an unscrupulous employee, to your business owners? How could you get the best data quickest? How would you do that? Transaction. Bingo. So I'd 100%, I'd go straight in, customer lifetime value report, search by highest spending customers, transaction list goes smallest to largest, you'd be in that report in 20 seconds tops. And if you screenshotted, or even if you took out your iPhone and took a photo of the page, if you couldn't export it, you immediately know who the biggest spenders are.
For all Infusionsoft users in the room, there are permission settings you can do to prevent people getting access to that.
Right, but these are the kind of things where the point I'm making is I'm for all the software, but I'm also for you thinking through. If you just entirely abdicate and go, oh, I've got software, we're good, when actually if you just thought through and go, oh, that's the easiest way to exploit this system. If I was a sales rep that was let go for bad performance and I wanted to take the best quality spenders and all their data elsewhere, how would I do it? And then you're going to go, oh, the fix, as Lisa just said, is actually can be simple, right? But you've got to actually sit there and think about it in the first place.
Yeah. We got to just hand it right down to Alexis.
Thank you. The question that I had, firstly, absolutely awesome. I particularly liked your mention of the budget that we should be spending, because I was quickly totting things up and going like, oh, okay. Every time I spend on this stuff, I feel a horrible sense of I'm overspending. It made me start to feel a little bit better, so that was good. But my question is around...
By the way, you're probably one of the rare ones. Most people that do that probably go, shit, I'm underspending.
Well, indeed, and particularly because we're a SaaS business,
Yeah,
it means that
you have
it's more, and particularly for one of my SaaS businesses, we're working with enterprise companies, they're asking, so are you ISO 27001? And we now are able to say yes, and we've done all these sorts of things, whereas most businesses in the room, none of their customers would ever ask a security question, never mind ISO 27001. My question's on the AI side. You mentioned that generative AI makes phishing attacks. I mean, we've all had the message, it's like, hi, I'm a prince of Nigeria. You, my best friend, I want to, give you all this. Is it? It's just emailed you. And obviously that becomes so much easier for criminals to do so much better than they did ever before. What other examples have you seen of AI starting to support successful attacks outside of those sort of perfectly generated social engineering emails?
That's a great question, because at the moment it's evolving.
Yeah, that's why I ask, right? Because it's so cutting edge.
Generative AI is helping to, let's say, antiviruses. I'll give an example with that. Most of the antiviruses that in cloud environment we use are real-time and get updated with real-time signatures for threats, which is all perfect. But now generative AI is faster, because they are able to understand what are the signatures so quickly that they can navigate even that. And that is one of the threats, because now what criminals do is, using all this information, they are able to still deliver Trojan hacks and malwares, Trojan horses and malwares on your laptop, while you think, oh, actually I have antivirus, I'm safe. No, you probably are not, because AI is much faster than antivirus today. So that's one of the biggest threats. What else? I mean, there is so much. One of the areas I think that we are expecting to happen is credential theft, when AI will start to replicate you entirely once they get access to your business account details, and then pretending being you in the business, and getting access to everything else and extracting data without actually delivering ransomware. And you will never ever know that actually something has happened, because they are so crafty and navigating through all the security protections you have. It's like a proper war. We are not there yet. I see some faces. We are not there yet, but I think this is where we are heading. So the question is how we will secure that, because it's like a snake going everywhere and going around any blockers and getting to exactly where it is intended to, the data or the financial accounts. And how you're going to stop it, I don't know yet. We will see.
The lesson here is, if you have kids, encourage them to take up cybersecurity as a profession, because it will always be a very stable role.
Not really.
Really?
I'd be interested, because my other question I've written down was, what should we be telling and teaching our kids? So I'd be interested in your follow-up to that.
Yeah.
So with the development of AI so fast, what happens is that a lot of the actual cybersecurity roles are becoming obsolete.
Oh, interesting.
So back at the time, at the moment we still have these roles which are called SOC analysts, but a lot of the tools that SOC analysts use are becoming AI delivered. Therefore, this role is becoming obsolete, and slowly this will take over other roles as well. So in the future, what you will have is people with a bit more experience that are becoming senior, strategizing. What you should have in place is combination of tools to make sure that your company is secure, but you won't need all the other roles. So do you really need to set aside security? Probably not.
Better off learning AI. Well, it seems to me there's two sides. There's the code side, and that's where AI, but then there's just the good old-fashioned human vulnerability side, like human psychology. Right? Think like this, and you may disagree with this, but here would be my guess, okay? What is the fraud from an external, not internal, what's the external fraud or scam that we're going to fall prey to giving our data or sending money to somebody external? What's the company that, I'm trying to phrase the question right without giving out away the punchline. What fraud are we most likely to be exposed to as the business owners in this room? Right, so nobody in this room, I hope, would fall for oh yeah, you've got a great auntie in Nigeria who's died and wants to send you $3 million. Just send us the processing fee. We're not going to fall for that. What are we going to fall for?
Supplier invoice.
Supplier invoice, yeah. There's one that I think everybody in this room is most likely to fall to. Oh, family's definitely true. True. For this room specifically, if I was trying to socially engineer it, HMRC.
I'd say.
Right. So, well, let me tell you what happened. Less than a month ago. So I've got an open investigation on one of my companies, and I got a phone call from HMRC. Right. Called me, and they went, "Hi, can we just confirm your details?" They had my name. They had my company name. They had, what did they tell me? Because I'm aware of this stuff, so I wasn't disclosing stuff.
Right.
They knew the company address, but that's all public data, right? Director, company name, company registered address, etc. And they went, "We're calling in regards to your HMRC investigation." And I went, "Okay, yeah, fine, great." Then they started asking questions, and I can't even remember what they said that just flagged it for me, because they didn't ask for money, but they were asking for me to give them some information.
That they probably should have already known.
Correct, and I think they might have even voiced it as we just need to pass security, blah, 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 blah. And they were asking for me, and there was just something, because I was able to take the call, I wasn't half distracted, where I might have easily gone, yeah, answer security questions, and I would have given them data which they could have used against me. And I actually went, "Hey, I'm just a little bit uncomfortable. Please, can I clarify can I get your number and I'll phone you, reference number, and I'll phone you back," even though that's my idea of hell, because it's legitimate. And they're like, "We need to speak with you about something urgently," and this particular topic was hot at the time. There was a lot going on, and there was, threats and backwards and forwards. So it could be. And that's why I say it's vulnerable, like it's social specific, because name of business owner is more prone to responding to, "Oh yeah, your company name, like you've got an issue."
Yeah.
I'm like, holy shit. And then so I took down the number, and then I Googled the number, and it was one digit different than a HMRC number. And so then I went, but it could be just like a different department inside of HMRC. So I went to my accountant and said, "Look, can you go through whatever the proper channel says for this, because it might be that they've got some news and we need to speak to them urgently." And he comes back, a day later and goes, yeah, it wasn't them.
Wow.
So I don't know, but I was this close. If I hadn't been distracted and just a little bit cautious and just given some information, I can easily see how that could have been utilised later.
Yeah.
And then my account went, "Oh, by the way, see this?" And he sent me a screenshot. He did redact the client's details from HMRC, a demand for payment to settle a tax issue, but it was fraudster, pay HMRC, but it was obviously scam account details. And I'm like, holy shit. So
Spoofing and phishing.
But the social engineering element, like in this room, and I'm going to go, "Oh, HMRC, if you've got an investigation or a VAT bill that's due," fucking hell, which isn't hard to figure out when your VAT quarters are, you're just immediately vulnerable. "Oh, there's been a problem with your direct debit. We need you to change the account details on the direct debit for your VAT payment."
Yeah. Yeah, you would be a good criminal.
Thank you.
Actually, just be cautious because there are websites that can spoof correct phone numbers. You can seemingly receive a phone call from your bank, but actually it's not your bank, but the number is correct. And they have all your details as well.
Sender IDs can be changed on text
Yeah.
messages and on telephone calls where it can appear that the incoming number is
Authentic.
what you think it should be, but it's not.
So what's the counter to that then? How do you not?
Yeah, what's the anecdote?
Not like being, sorry. Yeah, I guess so. What's the counter to that? You know, do you never click a link and you always go to that site? How do you protect yourself? Because that's incredibly clever stuff.
So the best advice on this is if someone calls you, as authentic as it sounds, if they start to ask you questions and you didn't expect that call, never give them any details.
Yeah.
Say then you will call them back. That's my best advice. You can't do anything about it, but as soon as they start to ask for details, even names, or say like, first we need to authenticate you, but hang on a second, you were the one that called me, right?
Yeah.
So
I
I'm
always log into the software and see if there's a notification from me logging in, because there's normally like internal mailboxes with all of our service providers.
That's a good
yeah,
tip.
no, I never answer the phone. I always then see who it's supposed to be from and phone them. And then so, you know, it's coming up as Barclays, you know, or HSBC or whatever called me, I'll call them and go, did you just call me?
So I'll give you a
Off a number that's like on my bank statement or something, you know?
Yeah, I'll give you a recent example. I had an issue, funny enough, I was on a train with a payments fraud specialist that specializes on this, and I almost got a victim to a fraud because these people had so many details about me, and it was like unbelievable to the detail that my friends got with the flight delayed and so on. And my friend next to me that specializes in fraud, like has decades of experience in this. Even she didn't get suspicious because it sounded so real. And after that, just a note of caution is, they kept calling, or if I call, it will go back to the same number. So the spoofing of the phone call was so deep that even if I call back and trying to reach my bank, I was going still to their network. So you have to be really cautious. Use your mobile app if it's your bank account, because if you try to contact your bank through the mobile app, at least it will go to your bank. But if you directly call back and dial in, it might be still going to the spoofers.
Wow, that's great. That's a great little tip. Well, this was alarming and enlightening. Thank you very much, Phil. We've got, 6 minutes left, so... Yes.
I want to ask because about Clarity AI. So your newest venture, Clarity AI. I want to make sure we get in about that because that sounded fascinating to me. Could you tell us about?
Clarity AI is my current company, and you already heard a few things that I experienced there. What does Clarity AI do? We provide a platform for ESG reporting for financial services, mostly wealth and asset management firms. When we think about asset managers that are investing money, to make sure that when they put investments on a third company, they verify if that third company meets their ESG objectives. For instance, it aligns with United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, or as a company as investors, we might have specific requirements for ESG, then it aligns with our own targets before investing and making the highest impact. So wherever we put money is actually giving back to the communities. So it is a fun tool. It's great for reporting as well. There are a few regulations requiring reporting, especially in UK and EU. So it helps also for reporting against specific regulations.
Perfect. And we found them at clarity.ai?
Yeah.
So, convenient company name. Lovely. And I suppose, just to try and condense this, Jenny, if somebody's going to leave this session with a to-do list?
Yeah, great question.
What are the top, say, 3 to-dos that you'd suggest that anybody in this room should go and check off to make themselves more secure?
Well, if you're not using password management tool, I'll come back to that. Make sure you use it so that you have some control of the strength of the passwords of your employees.
And by that you mean like a 1Password app?
Yeah, 1Password app. You can configure it minimum don't make it 8 characters, make it at least 12, because nowadays 8 and 10 characters is very easy to crack. But if you do it 12 with special characters in mix, and that helps.
PASSWORD 1, 2, 3, 4. Got it.
Make sure you enable a multi-factor authentication and try to block email and SMS. Make sure that it's always using authentication apps instead. And if you can afford, use YubiKeys or something like YubiKeys. If you are
YubiKeys is
YubiKeys is an actual key that you put in your insert in your laptop, and then it is encrypted fingerprint authentication. But this is good only for companies that have really sensitive data. Like in Salesforce, we had to go through 4 levels of authentication to log into the systems. But you don't need to do that if you're not a company that is dealing with very sensitive data. But just different layers of security that you need to consider. Another thing that is very important, we talked about vendors and invoices. Small companies often try to use small companies don't have a lot of money, so you tend to use free applications and software on the market, or the free version of a long list of paid plans. And the problem with the free versions is that they often don't have security, or they have limited security. But you end up integrating those applications into your email systems, infrastructure, sensitive applications, and these are open doors. So some of them could be a bit more secure, but you have to check if they at least are ISO certified, for instance, or have encryption in place, and they allow you to delete data. Most of them don't. So your data that you process through that application likely will be stored somewhere in the background, and that company will delete it who knows when. So your customer data, if it processes customer data, might be sitting in that third-party application for years until they do retention, schedule cleaning, or whatever. So use free tools, but be cautious. And what I will suggest is when you go back home, go through the free tools you're using. The ones that you're not using, disconnect them, because I know not everyone can afford to go through paid plans, but disconnect the ones that you're not using. Before disconnecting, make sure you can delete the data that has gone through. If you can, just email the companies or something, or you might be able to delete the data. That will clear the footprints you have digitally for your company and your customers, and reduce potentially some data exposure or data burst that can have worse impact for you financially, as a reputation, and also for your customer trust.
well done.
Never come back from a data breach of trust.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
It's all about customer trust.
This was definitely an eye-opening segment. Jenny, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for giving us your time, your energy, your expertise. Very grateful for that. I know that you specialize in working with enterprise-sized companies, and you definitely did the research on small business before you got here. So thank you for that. Please give her a big round of applause.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. 3 things you need to do now. Number 1, make sure you subscribe to this podcast so you do not miss an episode. Also, get on over to Amazon to get a copy of my latest book, Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity, 9.5 steps to improving your profits and cash flow. Also, join our Facebook group, the Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity community, to connect with other business owners.